Ana Hashem, Hoshiana. Ana Hashem, Hatzlicha.
Bruchim Habayim, welcome friends. I'm reading from the section of the Zohar that is titled, "And These Are the Kings." We're in verse 236, and it says here, "Ve'ele hamalachim asher malchu ba'eretz Edom lifnei melech livnei Israel." It says, "And these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom, before there reigned any king over the children of Israel." Bereshit 36:31. And Rabbi Yessa began the discussion with the verse, "Behold, I will make you small among the nations. You are greatly despised." Obadiah 1:2. "Come and behold, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, He divided the earth into 7 regions that correspond to the 70 ministers appointed over the nations. And these are the secret of the exterior, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, each consisting of 10 and thereby totaling 70. Now, on a literal level, we are talking about the kings of Edom in Bereshit 36:31. But on a more mystical level, what the Zohar is really referring to is the kings of Edom, which are known as the death of the kings, Shever HaKelim. And so, what does this mean? This is basically involving the creation of the Sefirot of every world, level, and entity. And it's always performed first. It says the kings reigned in the land of Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. Well, Israel wasn't even a place yet. But this is the sod, the secret of the husk precedes the fruit. And so this is a process of a breakdown that generates the Sefirot in the scheme of Igulim, of that entity, and then the rectification, reconfiguration in the scheme of Yosher. And these steps are known as Shever HaKelim, that shatters what is called the Tohu, and creating the shattered Tohu, Tikkun that rebuilds the shattered Tohu into the worlds of Tikkun. Now again, on the literal reading, the kings of Edom were descendants of Yaakov's twin brother, Esau, which at face value seems to be a simple listing of the 8 kings who ruled Edom in succession, and mentioning the death of only the first 7 kings and providing only a few additional random details in the Torah, while not in any way negating the simple meaning of the text of this narrative of the historical validity of the existence of the kings. The Kabbalists explain the additional encoded message using all the detail from the text, including the fact that the 7 kings died, are referring to the lower 7 Sefirot in the scheme of Igulim. And in particular, the reference to the kings is a reference to the Kelim, the vessels, the level of Malchut, kingship, as king, Malachim. The root is connected to this Malchut, which is the lowest sublevel in actualization of these 7 Sefirot. And these Kelim inherently unstable for 2 connected reasons. The first is they're unable to contain the Orot, meaning the lights that overwhelmed and filled them. The second is that they have no outlet valve, and then they only receive and do not give to the other Sefirot. The result is that the Kelim are so overcome with the power of the Orot, the lights, that they are unable to contain them, and they shatter into pieces. And these unstable Sefirot of the Igulim are referred to as the worlds of Tohu, chaos, and the underlying meaning of Tohu is confounded, shocked, and traumatized. And so Tohu can actually, analogy can be described by the state of a person who is so overwhelmed by the presentation of an idea that he knows he should be able to fathom, but because of the desperate presentation of its parts as in unintegrated concepts, the person cannot contain the idea or even think of attempting to give it over to anyone else. Now, there's so much to this, the death of the kings, the Shevra HaKalim, and the shattering, but these are very high levels. And to understand the very high levels, one must understand and learn the shattering, the Shevra HaKalim, and the kings of Edom, and what this all means. And this whole process is facilitated specifically by the Chilim and Malchut. And basically, the Arizal, he sums it up all by all of the damage and shattering and death, the Shevra HaKalim, that occurred to these kings of Edom. The seven Sfirot of Tohu was because of the separation between them as they issued one above the other in the scheme of Igulim, circles, and not only by the way of lines, not in the scheme of Yosher. And then there was a public domain as per the secret of separation, and it transpires the rectification is to join them such that they become lines, Yosher, that gives light to each other and gives in addition to just receiving, and they will undergo tikkun, rectification through this. Understand this concept of lines, Yosher, very well. This is what the Arizal says, and what they are, and how this is primary tikkun, rectification. So he says you must understand this because this concept is found in many places. And so going on to the next verse, the continuing of the verse, it says, the Holy One, blessed be He, appointed the 70 ministers over the 70 nations, each according to its worth, as it is written, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when He separated the sons of Adam, He set bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, Devarim 32:8. And just going back for a minute, when it says Ve'ele HaMalachim, Ve'ele here can refer to basically a spirit of defilement. This is showing us how this is in the shattering, and this also refers to Zerampin and the Heta Nukba, Ele. And so this is hinted to here in the death of the kings. 237. Among all the ministers appointed over their nations, no one is despised before the Holy One, blessed be He, as Esau's minister, because Esau represents the side of defilement, which is despicable before the Holy One, blessed be He. Esau's ministers was issued from the small grades behind the millstones. From the emptiness of the red sides came the minister of Esau. Therefore it is written, behold, I will make you small among the nations, you are greatly despised, which has the same meaning as, upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. Bereshit 3:14 greatly resembles the words, you were cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Now, grindstone and vehicle, or millstones, are really Netzach and Hod, and they are called the grinders, for they grind man for the righteous, which is Main Nukvin, for the righteous. And Netzach is called the vehicle, the Merkava, and Hod is called grindstone. And they are called these names because there is harsh judgment in Hod, from which the screen of the lock is made. And for this reason, everything is grinded on it. And It is there from which the righteous raise Mainukvin. Also, it is known that judgment does not act above its place, but only below its place. Hence, the degrees past the grindstone Hod of Zerampin are affected by the harsh judgment in the grindstone and cannot receive Galus. Hence, they're in Katnus, smallness. And so, what do they really grind? The Mainukvin for the righteous. That is the process. They process the lower prayers and yearnings, Mainukvin, that ascend from the Malchus, the souls, and refine them so that they can rise upward through Yesod to be received by the higher Partsufim. But the grinding involves judgment, din, and Hod especially contains a residue of Gevura called the screen of the lock, which restricts or measures what can pass upward. So Netzach is an active force and Hod is a resisting force, and together they produce friction by which desires are purified. And so what are the small grades behind the millstones? The degrees past the millstone, Hod of Zerampin, are affected by harsh judgment in the grindstone and cannot receive Gadlus. They are in Katnus. This means within Zerampin the line ends with Hod, and below Hod begins Yesod and Malchus, and also the external worlds, the Klipot, that feed off its backside. This is what we're dealing with, the Sitra Achra, who is the minister of Esau. This can also be understood as the Samic Mem. And the Panim, the front side of Zerampin, receives light of expansion, Gadlus, but the backside, the Achoraim behind the grindstone, is darkened by the judgments of Hod. It only receives diminished, broken, or reflected light. In other words, small degrees behind the grindstone means the residual or fallen lights and vessels that exist on the backside of Netzach Hod, where the light of Gadlus does not reach because of the lock, judgment, and Hod. And so the minister of Esau came from those small degrees behind the grindstone and from the emptiness and the red qualities. So Esau's spiritual root comes not from the holy side of Netzach and Hod, but from their backside, the Acharim, the Sitra Achra, that emerges when the judgments in Hod overflow downward. And the red qualities, the red sides, this represents Gevura and emptiness in the red qualities. The left side where the din has no balance from Chesed or Rachamim, pure severity. So the minister of Esau is the spiritual force that feeds from that zone of Katnus and harsh din, the root of impurity and idolatry. And so it says, upon your belly shall you go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. And this is cited in Bereshit 3:14, which describes the serpent's curse, which is the same as the fallen Achoraim. And this cuts off the flow of the upright light, Yosher. And so it must crawl on its belly, meaning it receives life only from the lowest residual sparks, the dust that falls beneath the holy system. And Esau came from those small degrees behind the millstone. His root is from the backside of the Sphirot of Netzach Hod and Zerampin. And these are the places where the din and Hod cause the light of Gadlus to stop producing small immature lights. And from this residual space arises the Sitra Achra, whose minister rules over Esau, the spiritual archetype of the Gevurah without mercy, the red, unrectified power of separation. And so Esau's minister comes from the emptiness and the red qualities, since he comes from the left line which shines from above downward, Chokhmah without Chasadim, at which time all the degrees are extended from there are empty. Verse 238, come and behold, within the lower grades, there are grades upon grades that are all different than each other, yet they are detached from and attached to each other in such a way that Malchut of each of the grades is separated, yet each Malchut is interconnected to Malchut. And the reason is that one enters and another ascends, and thus they are united by a bond. And so it says, Malchut is interconnected to Malchut, and one enters and another ascends. So basically, I have a drawing here, and really, the Tiferes of Beriah enclose the Malchut of Atzilut, and the Tiferet of Yetzirah enclose the Malchut of Beriah, and the Tiferet of Asiyah enclose the Malchut of Yetzirah. And so, this is Malchut interconnected to Malchut. When one enters, another ascends. Now the Baal HaSulam actually explains more and says the light of Chassidim enters through the screen of Chirik in the middle line, and then the light of Chokhmah in the left rises and shines from below upward. Thus all three lines are connected in one knot of the middle line. Had it not been for the light of Chassidim in the right line, Chokhmah would not have shone on the left. And had it not been for the middle line, the right and left would not have clothed one another. Thus all three are interconnected. And so the light of Chassidim enters through the screen of Chirik in the middle line. And then the light of Chokhmah rises in the left and shines from below upwards. And thus all three lines are interconnected. They're connected in one knot of the middle line. Had it not been for the light of Chassidim in the right line, Chokhmah would not have shone on the left. And had it been not for the middle line, the right and left would not have clothed one another. Thus all three are interconnected. (239). This bond has one level of the central column. Each level contains three bonds or three knots, as the central column contains all three columns. Each bond contains one crown, namely the crown referred to in the verse, the crown which his mother crowned him, Shir HaShirim 3:11. And in every crown there's a singular force of command, as I've shown earlier, as we have three bonds or three knots. Verse 240, the force of a command was assigned by being crowned from above, and assigned to descend until the stars and constellations are attached to it. Every force of command in each of the three crowns contained one star and one constellations, because all the stars are connected to the upper grades and the constellations to the lower grades. Each grade is crowned in certain places according to its individual worth. Now I'm going to read here from the Baal HaSulam commentary. So basically, it explains that the governing force of the lock was appointed by the crown above at the gar of the degree, where its place is set. Also, it was appointed to send to the vac of the degree until the stars and signs were tied to it. Each governing force that exists within each of the three crowns has one star and one sign in it, and each one, all the power of control that exists in each of the three crowns has one star and one sign in it, and all the stars relate to the degrees above, and all the signs to the degrees below. Hence, each degree is crowned in its proper place. Sign, a collection of stars connected to one another with a common root to all of them. So basically, these represent the stars. And the connection of the Sephirot is that Chokhmah does not shine with Chasadim in the right, and Chokhmah does not receive Chasadim in the right, if not by the decision of the middle line. All three need each other and are connected to each other. Hence, the whole reason for the connection is the light of Chokhmah, which cannot shine without Chasadim. For this reason, this applies only in Vak of each degree, where the key Ateret Yesod shines and the Yud parts from the Avir and the light of Chokhmah appears there. And so the crown is like a star in a constellation. So this can actually represent Aries, which has 4 main stars in it. And I drew a little diagram here of the constellation of Aries, which is a ram. And it has 4 main stars. So we have 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. And this really represents Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, and we'll say Da'at behind here. And the pattern of the 4 stars make it like the pattern of a ram. And the pattern is Vak. The stars are Gar. And the pattern is Vak. So again, these are the stars, and the blue line here would be like the Vak, the pattern of Vak. And the inner dynamic of the governing force of the star connects the other force of the stars, hence again making connection, and connects the other force of the star, and combined force of those stars make the brain of the entire constellation. When these forces combine together and cause manifestation, this is the Vak, and which is the lower 7 midot. And Chokhmah is the storehouse of the Chasadim. So basically, Chokhmah emits or flows Chasadim from within itself into the other midot or sphirot in the middle line. And Chokhmah gives its light to Tiferet and splits the light. Tiferet splits the light to Chesed, Gevurah, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. See, the Father lends its light to the Son. And the Son splits and divides its light to the other Sphirot. And the Avir, as it mentioned in the Baal HaSulam commentary that I read, about the air, which is Avir, means air. It's a mental plane or Kabbalistic code for the upper 3 Sphirot, Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, and Tiferet, which flow to Tiferet. And in their relation to Tiferet, Aleph separates Mem from Shin. As we see in Sefer Yetzirah here, we have Aleph separates Mem from Shin. And so going on, so there needs to be basically the middle pillar is the element of air, which is avir or vapor, havalin, which needs 4 to manifest the power, Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at. And the word for avir, air, if you remove the yud, which represents Chokhmah, you are left with or, light. And so Keter lends its light to Chokhmah, Chokhmah to Bina, and from there, Bina lends its light to Tiferet, which lends to the other 7. Which through Yesod, the light in Tiferet is gathered, and the other 8 Sphirot connected is gathered into Yesod, the middle pillar, which is also the element of air. And when that Chasadim coming from Chokhmah departs from the avir it becomes or. The chasadim get disseminated into malchus. The avir becomes light. The yud departs from avir and malchus receives that or. 241. When the grades diverge, they form a disrupting link until it is connected to its worthy place. So, when the grades are diverge, when they are separated, meaning in gar, there is an ending connection between them. And so the aspects of the defiled grades of the left side all diverge into several ways and pass, and the aspects of the red geverot that run from Bina, the secret of the red, and because lower geverot are counted below by thousands and myriads, then behold, I will make you small among the nations, greatly despised. So meaning, when the degrees are separated, meaning in Gar, there is an ending connection between them. That is, the control of the lock stops the illumination of Chokhmah until it connects to its proper place, meaning until its illumination descends to Vak. And all the degrees of impurity, which are on the left side, divide into several ways, which are keys and trails and which are locks. This pertains to the red geverot that are extended from Bina, which is Edom, which also means red in Hebrew. And for this reason, the geverot below are regarded as thousands and 10,000s. Now, although the left side is extended from the place of Vak, where there's domination of the key, the illumination of the lock expands there as well. Hence, the impure side that is extended from the left necessarily contains the dominion of the lock as well, and thus receives its katnut from there. And when the degrees separate in Gar, the ending connection between them stops the domination of the lock in the place of Gar that halts the illumination of Chokhmah until it connects in its proper place, and its illumination spreads to Vak as well. And although that place is dominated by the key, for this reason the degrees of impurity, which are drawn from the left side, where the two controls, lock and key, show their strength, all divide into several paths and ways. Ways are extended from the key, and trails are extended from the lock. Thousands depend on the illumination of the key, which contains illumination of Chokhmah. Since there are thousands in Chokhmah, tens of thousands depend on the illumination of the lock, which uses Gar and covered Chasadim. Since tens of thousands are extended from Gar and from the discernment of Chasadim, Katnus is extended to Esau by the force of the illumination of the lock, and receives the illumination of the left from above downward by the force of illumination of the key, from which it receives the emptiness and becomes very despised. 242, it says, Come and behold, and these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom. The land is the side of Esau's grade, which is basically Malchus of the Sitra Achra. As it is written, Esau, who is Edom, all these kings came from the side of the unclean spirit before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. Refers to the grades of Esau, which stands at the lower grades and are the first to be perfected. The reason, why the first to be perfected? Because just like the husk before the fruit, the impurity has to have tikkun. It has to be perfected first. As it says, the reason Jacob said, Let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant, Bereshit 33:14, is that Esau's grade are the first to enter and be perfected, for the lower grades are corrected first and then the higher grades later, as I was saying. And they were Therefore, before that there reigned any king over the children of Israel, for the time had not come for the kingdom of heaven to rule and join hands with the children of Israel. He therefore said, let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant. And the final verse, 243. After these grades are perfected, the kingdom of heaven will be aroused to rule over the lower beings. Its rulership shall start with Benjamin, the youngest of the tribes, namely with Shaul, who is of the tribe of Benjamin. And this is the meaning of the verse. There is Benjamin, the youngest, ruling them. Tehillim 68:28. The kingdom began to take root in him, later coming into its own place, to David Amelech, King David, to be established and never depart. And as we come to the conclusion of this section, I also want to give thanks to my chavrusa, my friend, Michael Melchizedek Milad, who has been a great help and also helped me understand certain concepts in this section of the Zohar. And I'm going to leave his link in the description of the video. And on that note, be blessed.